Hello there. Welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world, and so much love to each and every one of you. How are you doing? I do hope you're doing remarkably well. Loads and loads of love, as I said, and don't forget to go and get yourself that perfect drink, because I've got a lovely story for you tonight, and I hope you're keeping lovely and warm as the weather gets considerably colder. But for those of you that are in hotter parts of the world, I hope you're keeping lovely and cool. So before we get together to listen to a story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Click the notification bell and the thumbs up. And let's get started with tonight's story. Dear Sarah and all your lovely listeners, my name is Evangeline, and I grew up in Chicago, which is now a booming, dynamic, vibrant, multi-dimensional metropolis, which is pretty extraordinary because its early humble trade post roots were probably ill-prepared for Chicago to develop into such an imposing, impressive city, which it invariably is today. Many people wonder why one would ever choose to live in a city where 9 months of the year you have to put up with icy conditions and tons of snow, and may invariably spend much of that time hibernating indoors. I think my family rarely enjoys the Midwestern heritage here, along with the exquisite sandy beaches, excellent places to eat, from Mexican, Asian and Indian foods, and the colourful, diverse culture that we have here. We may have cold winters indeed, but we also have the most exquisite 90 days of summer that you could ever envisage or imagine, with lots of barbecues and al fresco dining. Being islanders, we all tend to gravitate towards water, and one of my all-time favourite places to frequent is Lake Michigan, and I literally love going cycling or taking our 2 French bulldogs for walks there. Another great thing about Chicago is that we do have an excellent way to navigate the transport system, from our trains to our buses, and we also have the most amazing museums, parks and festivals, which make living here all the more exciting and very interesting. So I think Chicago is a phenomenal place to live. I've spent my entire life living in this very pretty residential neighbourhood called Bucktown, Illinois, which is located close to excellent shopping, restaurants and plenty of nightlife. I do live in a double-storey contemporary-style red brick home on a very quaint little suburban street with its pretty treed pavements and individualistic-styled homes built in close proximity together, which gives our street incredible charm and character. I live in my home with my mother and father and my 2 older sisters, Beatrix and Victoria. My strange Bigfoot story rarely begins when something quite extraordinary began to happen to me. It would seem that when I was 15 years old, I began to experience the most extraordinary panic attacks, which includes the violent heartbeats and the disorientated blurry vision that made me feel that I was literally about to die. The first time that I had this bizarre experience, I remember I was standing in the clothes department in a large department store in downtown Chicago. Suddenly I began to feel my heart racing through my chest at 1,000 miles an hour. My breathing became shallow and very fast, while my body heat soared to such an extent that I was almost drenched in sweat, and my vision became incredibly blurred. I began to fear that I would drop down dead in a second in this department store. And I promise you, the idea of drawing this much attention to myself from the passing strangers in the shop made me sick to my stomach. I was actually more concerned about that than dying, which is exceedingly bizarre, but that's me for you. I remember reaching out for a chair and holding on to it for dear life with my hands, squeezing the wood as hard as I could. And then I just bolted out that door, running out of the store as fast as I could towards the parking lot, where I dived into the seat of the nearest taxicab that I could find and begged the driver to take me home as quickly as he possibly could. When I returned home, I became very calm, and my former frantic, outrageous, fearful behaviour simply receded and retracted, making me feel so daft and incredibly silly. Why on earth had I been so anxious and behaved so bizarrely, I wondered in horror. This sort of thing had never happened to me before. After this very peculiar event, the anxiety-induced phenomena would invariably rise up unannounced, like a horrifying serpent ready to strike its victim down, and would occur to me in numerous places on a regular basis, and it was beginning to ruin my life. I would be shopping in the supermarket for my parents, and in the middle of a transaction, I would have to bolt out of the store and run towards a taxicab, flagging it down, leaving behind all my groceries in the cart, and the shoppers queuing behind me saying, What the hell happened there? I've also been in hair salons in the process of having my hair washed, and in petrified terror I've hightailed it out of the salon with my hair full of soapy suds, leaving onlookers looking very perturbed. Worst of all, I've even run out of the dentist's room in the middle of a procedure, I kid you not. Before long, this crippling, embarrassing and harrowing fear just literally saturated my life like a looming black thundercloud that unfortuitously hung over my life like a baleful boomerang that could strike me down at any time, whenever. Whatever was happening to me, it was literally sucking and sapping the life out of me like a leech. Before long, I was almost completely housebound because I was so petrified of having a panic attack again. It was like the fear of actually having a panic attack was almost as debilitating and disturbing as the panic attack itself. It was a vicious cycle for me that could happen almost anywhere and everywhere, and it would always creep up on me unannounced in such a stealthy way, like a cheetah emerging from the dark shadows. One thing I know is that every time this transpired, I would feel absolutely certain that I was going to die, and these irrational phobias confiscated all my common sense, and I ultimately believed the very worst about my physical predicament. I remember the worst places for these attacks were where white shopping malls were, with never-ending areas of white-tiled floors and bright lights used to enhance the attractiveness of stores. It always seemed to set me off in a full-blown attack, so I hated those places. My parents became grievously concerned about my mental health and the destabilizing and dismantling effects that these attacks were having on my young teenage life. I was being robbed of interacting with my friends, going to school, and any other extracurricular activities like parties and exciting outdoor events. In truth, I had become like a prisoner trapped in my own home. It would seem that at home, or in our family car, or even a stranger's taxicab, I always felt very safe and secure. But out there in the big wide world, I felt incredibly vulnerable, assailable, insecure, and terribly afraid. Soon my parents were escorting me to multiple doctors and psychologists, and I had no end of blood tests and all kinds of mental health evaluations, and everything came back normal. I was presented with a clean bill of physical and mental health, although the psychologist did ascertain that I was displaying many symptoms of post-traumatic disorder, which my parents thought was utterly ridiculous. This was because my parents believed emphatically that I'd never been exposed to any kind of emotional trauma in my entire life. One of the doctors had prescribed anti-anxiety medications for me that had worked significantly well in reducing my high stress and anxiety levels, enabling my life to become much more manageable. But sadly, the attacks never faded completely, nor did they completely subside. I was living a precariously uncertain life, always looking over my shoulder, wondering if that hostile, unfortuitous boomerang would strike me down again. One day my mother was having a book club meeting at our home, and the women were all discussing the book that they had been reading. It just so happened that one of the characters in the book was a very nice gentleman whom had sadly been involved in the Vietnam War, and was exposed to so much grievous death and violence and killing that the after-effects devastated him so much that he began to experience the disabling effects of post-traumatic stress disorder. It would seem the woman began to discuss the implications of this disorder when my mother started sharing with her friends my huge struggle with anxiety and panic, so that they began to discuss the subject among themselves. I took my Evangeline to the psychologist, my mother told them. He told me that my daughter was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. I mean, how ridiculous is that? Evangeline has never been exposed to trauma a day in her life, she remarked. There's no way her anxiety can be related to that. How do you know that for sure? Asked Lily, one of the ladies. I was abused by my uncle when I was young, and no one in my family ever knew about it for many long years. My mother looked shocked. You think an adult has abused Evangeline? Asked my mother in absolute horror. Anything is possible, said Lily. Or she could have a repressed memory of a traumatic event that she cannot even remember. That's also conceivable. It happens quite often, and young children are renowned for suppressing traumatic events and memories. I know that for a fact. You are kidding, said my mother. You think Evangeline could be suppressing a painful memory of some kind? It's highly possible. You know, you should send your daughter to a regression therapist, suggested Sue, another one of the ladies at the book club. That's what I would do if I was in your shoes.
They can work wonders, you know. I've heard they have the ability to take you back to the traumatic event so that you know what the root cause of the trauma actually is. Apparently, when you get to the root of your problem, that's the only time that you can actually heal. You have to face the problem head on. You have to know what it actually is. So there we were, fast forward a week, and I was sitting in a therapist's white swanky leather recliner in a very debonair state-of-the-art looking office that was painted in a very pretty pale green colour, was calming and relaxing, and smelt prettily of lemongrass. The therapist entered the room smiling. I noticed that she was a very congenial middle-aged woman who possessed a very kind and gentle demeanour that I warmed to almost immediately. I felt I could trust her, which I think was significant for someone with my issues. "Hello, Evangeline," she said. "Your mother tells me that you have been experiencing big issues with anxiety that causes you a great deal of stress. Is that right?" "Yes," I said. "I used to be so confident, carefree and happy, but now I'm always afraid of having a panic attack." "What are you really afraid of, Evangeline?" she asked me. "The trouble is I really don't know. But when I have an attack, I always think I'm going to die." "Well, that's very common with a panic attack," the therapist assured me. "It happens to the best of us. Now, what I'm going to ask you to do in this session is to go back to the source of that anxiety, because even though you ultimately do not remember or even know what caused you this fear in the first place, your higher self knows everything about you, and I'm going to connect with that part of your subconscious mind to ask it to take me back to the source of that fear so we can establish what has caused you so much trauma in the first place. It's much like pulling out a weed in your backyard. If you just pull out the leaves without removing the root, that weed grows back and the problem resurfaces and sometimes becomes stronger and even more aggressive. If you pull the weed out by the roots, then it doesn't grow back. In this session, I'm aiming to find the root so that ultimately we can pull it out in one go. So what I'm going to do during our session is I'm going to ask you to relax, and as we count down, I'm going to transport you back into time as if we are in a time machine, and your higher self will answer my questions. Do you understand?" "I think so," I nodded. "Good, so let's get started." Before long, I was lying back in this recliner, and the therapist was beginning to relax me as she kept counting down and down and down, and finally she began to ask me all kinds of questions. "Evangeline, I want you to go back to the first time you became afraid. What year is it?" "It's July the 13th, 2005. "How old do you think you are?" "I think I'm 7 years old. Yes, I'm 7. "What are you wearing?" "I'm wearing a pale green dress with white shoes." "Where are you?" "I'm with my parents and both of my sisters in a forest." "What are you doing in the forest, Evangeline?" "Well, we're camping there. My father is actually barbecuing on the fire pit, and he's making us burgers. I'm feeling very hungry." "What are you doing now?" "I'm playing with my sisters in the woods, but my mother told us we must stay close to the campsite. She doesn't want us to wander off. She's very afraid of us getting lost and losing our way." "What are you playing? Can you see what you're playing?" "I think it's hide and seek. Yes, that's right. It's hide and seek. Now, Evangeline, I want you to focus on the area where you first feel that fear. Where are you now?" "I'm hiding from my sisters behind this very big tree. I think it's an oak. Something is tapping, or someone is tapping me on the shoulders. I think that Beatrix has already discovered me, and I feel very disappointed and rather cross because I thought I had found a really good hiding spot. I finally turn my head to acknowledge Beatrix, but it's not Beatrix that has touched me. I'm so startled because I can't believe what I'm seeing. I've never seen anything like this before." "Who is touching you, Evangeline? Describe the person to me." "Oh, no, it's not a person. It's a huge, hairy giant. It's very, very big and very scary to look at. I've never seen anything so colossal before. This thing is larger and stronger than a grizzly bear, and it's standing up on 2 feet like a human. It's a very thick creature with lots and lots of muscles, and it's got breasts too. It must be female. It's staring at me with these big brown eyes. What are you scared of, Evangeline? Why are you scared of this creature? Because it's big and it's frightening. I'm thinking that it might want to eat me or to hurt me or harm me. I'm not sure what it wants. Why would you think that, Evangeline? Because the creature is intimidating. It's powerful, like a lion or tiger. It's very frightening. Now I want you to engage with the creature's psyche for a moment. I want you to perceive yourself through the creature's eyes. Try and read her energy and see what you get from her. See what she really wants with you and see if you can tap into her emotions and feelings. You can do it. Try. I sense she doesn't want to hurt me at all. I'm surprised by that. I think she's very sad and lonely, even though she does have friends, but she doesn't have any children of her own. I think she's recently had a stillbirth. She's emotionally fragile and very overwrought. She was broken up by the death of her youngling and has not come to terms with it. It's eating her up in shreds inside her. She feels so desperate and hopeless, like she's really lost in life. How does that make you feel, knowing that about this creature, I mean? I feel very, very sad for her. It makes me want to cry because I can sense her desperate, debilitating pain, almost as if it was my own. I can feel it. I think she feels so lost and alone, as if her life has somehow lost its purpose and meaning, and even value. So what does this creature want with you then, Evangeline? I think she wants to take me to her home with her. She wants to find a substitute for her youngling that she lost so tragically. I think she wants to raise me as her own child. She so desires and longs to be a mother again, more than anything else in this entire world. She feels that it's what she's meant to do, that it's her life's purpose, and that's what she's here for in the first place. That's all she desires. Well done, Evangeline. Well done. You're doing incredibly well. I'm so proud of you. Now I want you to tell me what is happening next. What is she doing? Is she standing there? Is she moving? Is she looking at you? What's she doing now? Well, she's picking me up and carrying me over her shoulders, and she wants to take me back to her home. Why are you not screaming, Evangeline? Why aren't you letting your parents know that you're being abducted by this creature? I'm too scared to scream, because I think the creature could hurt me if I screamed. You know from the creature's energy that she would never hurt you, right? I know that now, but the little me doesn't know that. The little me is feeling very, very afraid. Of course you are. Now tell me, what's happening next? The creature's running with me on her back. She's moving very fast. She's very swift. I can hear her breathing. She sounds like a horse when they breathe. I feel that she wants to run as fast as she possibly can, and she's very, very fast. Now I want you to tap into her energy again, Evangeline. What is she feeling now? I sense she knows she shouldn't be abducting me. She knows it's very wrong. But her longing for a child is so unbearably strong that it's driving her and propelling her to take me with her. She wants a child that badly. What happens next, Evangeline? I can hear my mother screaming my name. She sounds frantic and desperate and terrified. I think she's looking for me and she can't find me. The creature stops dead in her tracks because she hears my mother's desperate calls. Tell me, Evangeline, how is the creature feeling now when she hears your mother crying out like that in terror? I sense she feels absolutely terrible because she knows the pain of losing a child herself. I think she realizes that she cannot take me from my mother. She understands that she would inflict too much pain on her, and she can't do it to someone else. So she's deciding to return me to my mother, and she turns around and runs back with me on her back and puts me back behind the oak tree where I was previously hiding. I watch her moving away. She moves like the wind. She is so graceful and beautiful. But now I know how she's feeling. I feel very sad for her. What is happening next, Evangeline? Tell me what's going on now. My mother finds me. She's shaking me very hard and very aggressively. She's furious with me. I think she's seething because she thinks I deliberately didn't answer her when she called out for me. She's reprimanding me severely and telling me that I'm very naughty and I must never make her scared like that again, and that I was a very bad child to do that. I tell her that a big hairy lady took me. What does your mother say to that? She ignores me because she thinks I'm making all kinds of excuses and telling fibs. She believes I've been very badly behaved, and she's not happy with me. She's decided to ignore me because she's so very angry. I can see it in her face. Her face is bright red. She keeps looking at me, and she looks mad. Now, Evangeline, I want you to tune into the energy of the creature that you just saw. You found the source of your fear. You realise that now. Was it foolish to be fearful of this creature? What does your higher self say about that? I have nothing to fear, because the sad creature has a beautiful, kind, gentle energy, and she would never have ever hurt me. All she wanted was to be able to give and receive love, like a mother does. How do you feel about your panic attacks now, knowing that this creature that you encountered is in fact the root cause of your fear? I feel very silly and very pathetic. There was nothing to fear. There never ever was. Good girl, I'm proud of you. You're right, Evangeline. You have nothing to fear. So I want you to release that fear now. Let it go. I have the root here in my hand, and I'm pulling it out, and the fear is withering and dying as I speak. And now it is gone. There is no root to that fear any more. Do you understand that? I think so. I definitely feel that the fear is gone. Good. That was the end of my session. After my session, I was amazed how sad I felt for the hairy creature that I now know to be a Bigfoot. The poor critter wanted to abduct me because she had recently experienced a stillbirth, and she was looking for a substitute for her unbearable pain. I know what she intended to do was clearly wrong, but in the end it would seem that her conscience definitely got the better of her. I was amazed of the session that I was able to tap into her energy and feel her very thoughts and even her emotions, and it gave me an opportunity to understand and perceive her own behaviour and why she had tried to abduct me in the first place. After my incredible session with the therapist, I subsequently found out from my parents that I had been in a forest in the area in the Pacific Northwest when I went on a camping holiday in 2005. My mother said I was playing hide and seek with my sisters, and when they could not find me, they alerted my parents. I gather my mother was absolutely enraged with my older siblings for not keeping an eye on me, which is irrational because we were playing hide and seek at the time. My mother believed that I had wandered off and become very frantic, but I gather I was not gone for very long. They were oblivious to the fact that I was nearly abducted. I was apparently about 7 at the time. Beatrix was 10 and Victoria 9, which affirmed what I had observed in my regression therapy. I want to tell you, after the regression session, my panic attacks never ever returned, and my parents believed the therapy was miraculous for some reason. I never told anyone about the Bigfoot in my regression therapy. I know it sounds odd, but I didn't want to share my encounter with anyone. But in this anonymous forum I thought, well, why not? So there you are. That's my story. Well, I just want to thank you so very much for sharing that amazing story. Until next time, goodbye and good night.